The world she knew was a quiet sanctuary of ordered pages and the hum of fluorescent lights. Elizabeth, a librarian by trade and temperament, moved through the halls of Cambridge with an unassuming grace. Her life was a meticulously catalogued collection of days, each one much like the last. But that was before her roommate, a whirlwind of artistic chaos, decided Elizabeth was a masterpiece in desperate need of a new frame. The mousy brown hair was sacrificed for raven black dye. Her sensible business attire was replaced by silks and velvets in shades of wine and shadow, a touch of kohl, a whisper of dark lipstick, and the librarian vanished, leaving a creature of nascent Gothic beauty in her place. Elizabeth looked in the mirror and saw a stranger, a woman poised on the edge of a story she hadn't yet learned to read. The change was more than skin deep. It was a premonition, a shedding of a self that was no longer sufficient for the world that was about to claim her. It was in the dead of night, when the ancient stones of the university slept, that the first tremor of her new reality struck. A voice, not of sound but of thought, clawed its way into her mind. It was a gravelly, ancient consciousness, a psychic summons that resonated with a primal familiarity she couldn't explain. Elizabeth, the command was absolute, pulling her from her bed. She followed the silent call out of her dormitory, across the dew-kissed lawns, to the shadow of an ancient church. There, perched atop a weathered buttress, was Balagonnn. He was a grotesque masterpiece of carved stone, a gargoyle she had never thought to question. But now, his granite eyes glowed with a faint, inner light. His mental voice guided her gaze to his section of the graveyard wall. As she watched, ivy-choked stone receded, revealing a gaping maw of darkness. An entrance, Balagonn's thoughts explained, to the catacombs, a secret artery pulsing beneath the hallowed ground, leading to a forgotten mausoleum. He was her guardian, he revealed, and her time of quiet study was over. A great and terrible darkness was stirring, and she was at its very heart. The weight of this new world was too much to bear alone. The library, once her refuge, now felt like a cage of blissful ignorance. She needed allies, not for comfort, but for survival. Her instincts, sharpened by her dawning abilities, guided her to the most unlikely of companions. She assembled a strange constellation of students, each drawn from a different corner of Cambridge. There was Jake the Jock, whose physical confidence masked a fierce, protective loyalty. His strength was a bulwark in a world dissolving into shadows. Then came Tina, the artist, her fingers perpetually smudged with charcoal. She saw the world in symbols and patterns, her creativity a key to unlocking ancient designs. Becky, the bookworm, was a natural choice, a kindred spirit from Elizabeth's former life whose knowledge of history and forgotten lore was vast. Jennifer, the eccentric, who spoke of auras and energy fields, was initially dismissed by the others, but her uncanny intuition often pierced the veil of logic to grasp unsettling truths. And finally, there was Paul, the shy, observant one who rarely spoke but missed nothing, his quiet presence a steady anchor. They were a fractured, improbable team, bound by Elizabeth's terrifying revelation. She told them everything of Balagon of the catacombs, of a warlock whose name she did not know but whose malevolent intent she felt like a cold dread. She told them he wanted her and she didn't know why. Their research began in earnest, a frantic race against an unseen clock. The ancient libraries became their battlefield. They pored over crumbling manuscripts and esoteric texts, their fingers tracing sigils that writhed on the page. Tina sketched recurring motifs, while Becky cross-referenced them with forgotten mythologies. It was a puzzle of terrifying proportions, clues to the warlock's identity and his obsession with Elizabeth scattered like bones through history. But the pursuit was not a one-sided affair. One rain-slicked evening, as they were deciphering a cryptic passage in a secluded alcove of the library, the world outside fell silent. A guttural groan echoed from the quad, followed by a chorus of them. Peering through the leaded glass, they saw them shambling figures, their bodies in decay, their eyes burning with unholy light. Zombies, summoned from the unhallowed earth, were converging on the library, driven by a single, malevolent will. Panic erupted. Balagonn's voice screamed in Elizabeth's mind. The catacombs! Now they fled, the sounds of splintering wood and shattering glass at their heels. They scrambled through the graveyard, the grasping hands of the dead clawing at their ankles, and plunged into the dark opening Balagon had shown her. The chase continued into the labyrinthine tunnels, the groans of the pursuing zombies echoing in the claustrophobic darkness. They ran blindly, their only guide the faint, psychic pull from Elizabeth's guardian. Deeper they descended, until they stumbled into a vast, cavernous chamber that took their breath away. The air was thick with the scent of dust, decay, and something ancient and predatory. The chamber was a vampire den. Ornate, eccentric coffins, carved from ebony and inlaid with gold, lined the walls. Piles of treasure jewels, silks, and priceless artifacts glimmered in the faint light of their torches. They had traded one nightmare for another. just as the lid of the nearest sarcophagus began to creak open. A figure emerged from a tunnel on the far side. It was Father Michael, the priest from the church, a heavy silver cross held before him. "This way," he commanded, his voice a bastion of calm. "The consecrated ground of the church is just ahead. They cannot follow." He led them through the winding passage, the sounds of their pursuers finally fading as they emerged into the cool, sanctified air of the church crypt. They huddled together in the sacristy, their bodies trembling with adrenaline and terror. They were all in one piece, miraculously unharmed, though forever changed. Father Michael, now understood to be far more than a simple priest, explained that the church and catacombs were an ancient battleground in a war they had just stumbled into. Not all creatures of the night served the warlock. Some, like the vampires whose den they had invaded, were ancient and neutral, while others actively opposed him. The warlock's power was growing, turning the delicate balance of this hidden world into a war for domination. Elizabeth now understood her university was not just a place of learning, but a feeding ground, a recruitment center where monsters wore human faces. As the shock subsided, Jake and Paul revealed what they had found. In the panic of their flight through the vampire den, amidst the glittering treasures, they had each been drawn to an object. Jake, guided by a warrior's instinct, had grabbed a heavy, leather-bound scroll sealed with a silver clasp. Paul, ever the observer, had quietly pocketed a small, intricately carved amulet that seemed to hum with a faint energy. They had escaped with more than their lives. They had commandeered artifacts of a world they were just beginning to comprehend. The scroll and the amulet felt like weapons, like answers, the first tangible pieces of hope in their fight against the shadows. The night had been one of unrelenting terror, but as the first rays of dawn pierced the stained glass windows, they knew it was not an ending, but a terrible and magnificent beginning. The hunt was on, and they were no longer just the prey. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this story, be sure to subscribe for the next chapter.